Well, ladies and gentlemen, the mainstream comic book industry is in a absolute rut. We have been talking about this for a while now, and they will try to deny it. They will try to gaslight you. They will try to say that the American comic book industry is at its highest that it's ever been. But let's be real, the numbers don't lie. As much as they try to hide the numbers, and believe me, they try, ultimately the truth is going to come out like it is right now. And apparently the comic book industry is at its worst since 2004.
I think a lot about meteors, the purity of them. Boom, the end. Start again.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking over 20 years, or almost 20 years, just about 20 years of absolute destruction for the American comic book industry. And it's all because they decided to go the complete opposite way of what fans have been asking for. You can try to deny this all you want. You can try to come out here and say it has nothing to do with wokeness, even though a lot of it does. You can say that it has nothing to do with XYZ and it's just simply the sign of the times. And yet manga just seems to be completely immune to all this stuff. It seems to be that manga can just continue to thrive over and over and over again, while the American comic book industry has some weird virus that's going around that just is unable to go to manga. It's just very strange, right? So let's get into this article, guys, from Fandom Pulse. But of course, before we do, if you are new here, just consider hitting that subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate it, and like the video to push us out into that YouTube algorithm. It says the comic book industry rattled as DC Comics posts disastrous sales with a 25% drop in 1 year and lowest numbers to bookstores since 2004. Ladies and gentlemen, 25% in one single year. And what did they end up ramping up with, mind you? What did they end up ramping up with over the last year? Gee, I wonder what that is. Could that be all the gay shit that they were trying to utilize and propagandize and all that stuff? All the gay comic books, DC Pride, gay Superman, all this stuff that nobody was asking for, all this stuff that only activists say they'll buy, but they'll never actually buy. Yeah, they were ramping up that. Then it says the last several months have woken up to many in the comic book industry's problems. Retailer Glenn O'Leary blew the doors off of the problems in mainstream comic book content and their self-insert characters, which was roundly mocked by industry professionals who felt threatened and identified with his statement. This was followed up by journalist Heidi McDonald laying out figures that Marvel and DC Comics were in trouble. Now, buried in another article, it appears DC Comics is in even worse of a position than we suspected. Now, honestly, I knew that they were failing miserably, okay? DC is failing miserably, more so than Marvel, but Marvel's not that far behind. Let's be real, guys. And mainstream American comic books, only the most diehard of the diehard fans are still around. The ones who are casual fans who would probably buy maybe a few first edition issues and stuff like that, those people are gone. You basically alienated them. You made them feel like shit, number one, if they didn't buy your gay comic books. And number two, you told them they weren't important. You told them they weren't the modern audience and that you were going for a completely different audience that for some reason just doesn't exist, because this audience that you've been chasing doesn't seem to buy your product. So after a while, you got to wonder, are they really your audience, or is it just made up to try to sell investors on shit that they know is going to flop? It says the writing's been on the wall for some time. Comic book retailers are closing shops regularly. Marvel and DC Comics made moves to not even report their sales any longer. And that right there is the biggest sus of all, okay? Because manga will report their sales wholeheartedly. They will report how much they sold, how many units they sold, what brand, like everything. Everything is transparent. And yet with the American comic books, they don't want to report it. Gee, I wonder why. Could it be for the same reason that these streaming services don't want to talk about their actual real viewership numbers, that they never want to release how many people actually viewed the TV show unless it was a massive hit and they can utilize those numbers, which is what, 1 out of 10 times if they're lucky? That is a big tall tale red flag that if a company doesn't want to be transparent about their numbers, you automatically know that they're hiding something. Whether or not they actually are or not, that is how it's going to be perceived, and that is usually what ends up being the case. Then it says, all while the gatekeepers of the comic book industry kept posting that there was nothing wrong and that the sales were fine. Now, Tom Taylor was one of those people who did that, okay? I just recently made a video about Tom Taylor and his gay Superman and how the woke are basically eating their own and turning their backs on him. He is one of those people of many that try to pretend as if the American comic book industry is perfectly fine. It's not. It hasn't been for a very long time. There is a massive rot going on in the comic book industry right now, and that rot is slowly but surely destroying and eating away on the inside of this industry. And unfortunately, a lot of the people who are in the industry are refusing to get any help, refusing to remove the rot. So what ends up happening, the rot will consume the industry. It's only a matter of time, man. We've seen reports that IDW Publishing has laid off more than 40% of its staff in the last year, showing signs of wear for the second string of mainstream comics as the heavily licensed publisher under Heather Antos has circled the wagons around diversity hiring at the expense of their content quality. Meanwhile, smaller publishers like Aftershock and Scout Comics were outed as not even paying their creatives. How does this impact DC Comics? In a recent interview, Batman writer Chip Zdarsky finally blew the doors off the comic book industry collapse. He admitted massive issues were going on with the mainstream industry and saying that the problems in comics are a myriad right now. There are so many ways that the industry is being harmed and is having trouble kind of recovering. It's facing challenges. While he didn't elaborate as to the sales, after talking with several retailers reading between the lines of Heidi McDonald's show coverage, one finds that sales have been on a steady decline since the pandemic, as comic readers have mostly gotten out of the habit of reading these books from Marvel and DC Comics after so many of their beloved characters had been changed to the unrecognizable to their classic forms, much of which has been pushing LGBTQ propaganda. DC Comics has suffered worse than Marvel, with their Dawn of DC relaunch failing to garner much interest. Fans seem to be tired of having to completely reboot the DC universe every few years. From New 52 to Rebirth, a third relaunch is just over a decade seemed like a good jumping off point. Once DC Comics have made changes to Superman, Robin, Hawkgirl, Green Lantern, and more to add homosexual virtue signaling, few wanted to continue with the lines. It's been a running joke in the industry that Batman is the only DC Comics can sell anymore. Now, let's be very clear, okay? When it comes to the American comic book industry, the fact that they feel like they have to reboot it every few years is a tall tale sign that this shit is not selling, okay? If it was selling, they wouldn't reboot it. They would continue doing what they're doing. And it's sad enough as it is that on the American comic book industry side, it seems as if they run out of ideas so fast, they have no ideas to begin with, that all they can do is constantly reboot. Whereas you have people over in the East that are constantly trying to find ways to come up with new ideas. They will very rarely, if ever, reboot something. They will always either make it a sequel, continue the lore, continue the canon from where it left off, or if it fails, come up with something new. They'll never take something that fails and try to just reboot it into... very rarely will they ever do that. They always are going to come up with something new. So it is a tall tale sign of a difference between the actual creatives over on the East and these shills over here on the West. It is a bad thing for us. If you want to fix the American comic book industry, you have to get passion back into the business. You have to get the love of the art, the love of the passion back into it. You have to get people who want to make the fans happy back into the industry. You have lost all of those people. You have lost every single one of those people. It's unfortunate, but it's true. If you're going to take advice from anybody, take advice from the people in the East that are fucking destroying you on your home turf. They're destroying you here in the United States. Even though their content is made for the eyes of the East, they're still destroying you here. Why? Because people have realized that their stories, their art, their creativity far surpasses everything that's happening right now in the comic book industry. It is just not even close. It never was close. And now the difference is even that much bigger because of this identity politic nonsense you have decided to push. So hopefully, ladies and gentlemen, the American comic book industry can find some sort of fix. But honestly, after many years, as you can see, almost 20 years of going downhill, I highly doubt there's going to be a fix coming anytime soon. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you did enjoy. And if you did, consider leaving me a subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Don't forget to like the video, comment, let me know what you thought, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Hypnotic out.